All right, all right. So we'll try to make this interactive and practical as possible, and so keep you engaged throughout the whole time. So we'll go in, and what I'd like to do is I have some folders to pass out. I'd like to take, if it could be like one per church or ministry, and so what we'll do is I'm going to have my wife help pass those out here. But like I said, just if you're representing your church, we can do that. But I would love to get these to you. Let's see. There you go. There we go. Did y'all need one? All right. Here you go. There you go. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I don't know. Yeah, there's some spots up here. I don't know if we have any Baptists. You're not back row Baptist. Yeah. So okay, so we're good. We're good. Pentecostal, we got front row. That's all right. Again, my wife is passing out the folders. Just raise your hand. We just want one per church or ministry. We've got plenty here, but just to make sure everybody gets something. Steve, can you guys hear okay back there? Okay, perfect. Perfect. And there are a few chairs up here if anybody needs to sit down. Yes, I've got plenty here. So, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Well, good morning. As they're still passing these out, just want to introduce myself, make sure we maximize our time here, because I know following this is the lunch, and you may get hangry. Is that all right? So I don't want that to happen. I don't want you to take that out on me. My name is Draper. I am with Simplicity Guardian. And just to share with you a little bit about who Simplicity is and who I am, I thought it would be important to share that before we start here. Simplicity is the fastest growing financial product distribution company in the U.S. We have over 100 different offices across the United States. Our office deals specifically with churches, pastors, and ministries. But Simplicity has over 1,400 employees nationwide. We have over $14 billion in assets under management. We have over $12 billion in assets through annuities. So it's a large company. And so I tell you all that because it's not just us in our office in Plano. We have resources to a lot of different Simplicity resources. One is we're going to talk about in just a little bit toward the end with financial planning. But then two, we have access to Simplicity Wealth. We have over 200 different money managers. But we also have Simplicity Insurance, which is Simplicity is the largest independent distributor of insurance in the U.S. So we have access to a lot of carriers. I tell you all that just so you know it's not just us in Plano, our office, but it's a larger group with Simplicity. Guardian was started in 2012 at the request of a state convention. And they had some of their executive members that had lost some money. Some of you may remember 2008. When the market dropped, the great financial crisis. And so they were looking for an alternative to their denominational retirement plan. They talked to a guy by the name of Jerry Whitley. Jerry started working with these churches. He brought on a guy named Keeley Rule. They started using Simplicity for some of their assets under management and utilizing them. Simplicity found out who they were serving. They believe in the local church. They believe in pastors. They did a mergers and acquisition with Guardian Financial, bought them in 2021. So we are a Simplicity company. Keeley Rule is now our managing partner, and Jerry has retired. And so I wanted to let you know about just a little bit of background. And Steve Biffle is here. Steve, many years ago, there was a representative from Simplicity that got connected to the Fellowship Network, and that's why I'm here today. I started working with Simplicity Guardian last June. I grew up a preacher's kid, and so spent time in the PK, or what'd you say, Steve? A theological offspring. So I'm going to have to start utilizing that, a TO. So a TO is who I am. My dad retired in 2005 from the local church. You know, when you retire, you don't retire as a minister, right? He's 88, he'll be 88 in a couple of weeks. He's still preaching funerals, still making visits, still filling in the pulpit. So he's still actively involved in ministry. And so I'll tell you about my dad, because really that's one of the reasons why I do what I do. I spent 26 years in the local church. I have seminary degrees. I've got a Master of Divinity, Doctor of Ministry. Pastor Steve, they didn't teach this in seminary. They didn't teach what we're going to talk about in seminary. And if they did, I probably skipped that day, or maybe I was sleeping in class. But I spent 26 years in the local church, transitioned in 2019 to the financial industry. I was an independent financial advisor with LPL for 6 years, and then joined the team here. But my dad retired in 2005. They say that the last 5 years before retirement and the first 5 years of retirement are the most important. Does anybody know why that would be? The last 5 years? Why would that be important? The last 5 years before retirement. Yeah, okay, and you're wanting to get as much as you can for retirement, right? So you want to do that. But then the first 5 years of retirement is known as the sequence of return risk. And so what that is, if the market drops, it's hard to recover. It's hard to sustain that for the course of your lifetime. My dad got hit on both sides of that. In his retirement, he lost half of his retirement in 2000, 2001 with the dot-com bust. He retired 2005, so he didn't have too much time to recover from that. He started taking his distributions, and then we just talked about the great financial crisis hitting in 2008, where the Dow Jones dropped from the end of 2007 to the beginning of 2009, 53%. So, you know, that is something that's hard to overcome. But fortunately, my parents don't live with us, okay? So that's an amen, right? But my dad did actually it was the guy that talked to me about being a financial advisor, but they had counsel from a financial advisor, and the Lord has provided for them to this day, but the Lord did use a financial provider to do that, a financial advisor. And so I wanted to share with you why I do what I do, is to help pastors and ministers to be in the best position they can be for retirement. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I know Pastor Steve last night, you said, 68% of ministers face burnout? 67. And so, you know, as you look at that, we can see there's a lot of stresses that pastors and ministers face each day. And, I went the wrong way. By the way, before we get started, you have in your book there a Minister's Income Guide. If you would like this in a digital form, scan that. We will not contact you. This is not, if you scan this, just know that this is just for you to download that resource. This is free for you, so scan that right there. So I'll leave that up there if you would like that QR code just to download a digital copy of what you have in your folder. And a majority of what we talk about will be in this Minister's Income Guide. On page 12 of this Minister's Income Guide is a housing allowance worksheet that we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. So that is the digital guide. The other thing, if you scan, we'll have another QR code at the end, or if you scan here, and I may send this around too. If you would like to talk with us, you can sign up here, and I will contact you. We'll schedule a time with you, and I'll just send this around too while we're here. If you would like to do that, if you're old school, I have the sign-up sheet. If you say, hey, I feel a little bit more technologically advanced, you can scan this code, and there's another QR code at the end as well. But as we get back to the burnout, a lot of reasons why ministers face burnout. One of the main reasons why ministers drop out of ministry is, I know Pastor Steve talked about this a little bit last night, with finances. And that's why we're here today. We want to make sure that you maximize your housing allowance, make sure that you are looking at down the road for retirement. But there was a study done by Gray Matter Research 2 years ago. And here's some of the things that they found with pastors and ministers. Over 80% of pastors surveyed sometimes sacrifice their own well-being. All right, I know that most of you probably can raise your hand, yes. I know as a PK or a TO that was the case quite a bit. Over half say that sometimes sacrifice their family's well-being while doing ministry. And then the question was 32% of ministers identified financial as one of the main reasons for burnout. And we'll go to the next. 48% say they had less than $5,000 in non-retirement savings. 1/3 said they had stopped or reduced retirement savings to cover emergencies. And then the last part right there, 75% said that they wish they had started saving for retirement earlier. I just talked with a guy on the phone earlier. He was in the mission field for 20 years. And so he just started one of our 403B plans. He's like, I'm so glad that I found you guys. I know I'm late to the game, but I'm trying to make up for what I didn't have. And so, the best time to start retirement plan is now, if you don't have it. So, but then this is also another study done many years ago, I think in 2017. 30% of pastors have student loan debt averaging $36,000. 33% have less than $10,000 in retirement funds. 29% said they had no retirement savings. 84% do not have funds to cover emergencies and major purchases. So they say, what is the fix on this? They say that the fix is education and finding an advocate. And that's what we do at Simplicity Guardian. That's why we're here today, is for the education piece, is to help you with that. The other thing is we're an advocate. And I know that Keeley and we talk with a lot of different church boards to help pastors to be an advocate for them. And so that's what we do, is we help with education and finding an advocate. So this morning we're going to look at some money mistakes that ministers make. The first one could be opting out of Social Security. And I know that we'll get into this. Opting out of Social Security. The second is not maximizing housing allowance. And then the third is not using or leaving the church plan. And so many people, you can opt out of Social Security if you did not, out of being a conscientious objector. I know when I was in seminary, that was not the reason why some people were talking about opting out of Social Security. It was a hot topic when I was in seminary. Are you going to opt out of Social Security? And the whole reasoning was, I can invest my money better than the government can. It wasn't to be a conscientious objector. But if you have opted out and you are a conscientious objector, that is great. That is something that a conviction from the Holy Spirit, if to do that. And so, but I will say that for the people that I knew, that was not the case. It was, I can invest my money better than the government can. And so I've talked to some other guys who were in school. They passed around the form, I think it's 4361, if you want to opt out of Social Security. And the professor, just put it on their desk. He said, I had enough sense not to sign the paper. He said, I had enough sense to go home and talk with my dad about it. But a lot of them were just signing up and turning that back in. They opted out of Social Security. But when they opted out of Social Security, they didn't realize they also opted out of other forms of insurance, like Medicare and Medicaid, disability. So there's a lot of things that it wasn't just Social Security, but it was a whole line of things. And so we do work with pastors who have opted out of Social Security, and as far as looking at ways to get your credits. You can't opt back in yet. I know that this is in Congress right now. I haven't seen if they passed that or not, but it could, as you're looking at this could be $1 million mistake. As you look at the average, what you receive in Social Security, $1,500 in Social Security, that's $18,000 a year, $545,000 over the course of 30 years. And your estimated Medicare benefits could be close to that. So it could be over $1 million. Yes, Tom. Yes, sir.
What if somebody earned their 40 quarters prior to becoming a minister?
Yeah, they still are good. They'll be able to receive Social Security, Medicare. Medicare is the main thing. I mean, that's one of the main things too, is because that was part of the things that some people didn't realize, is that, hey, I opted out of Medicare, but some of you may know Medicare, man, it helps if you're already there. I mean, that's a big thing. So opting out of Social Security. The other is not maximizing your housing allowance. So we're just going to camp here a little bit about housing allowance. Make sure that you're maximizing your housing allowance as a minister. And so if you look at one of the things you can look at is IRS Publication 517. And so that's one thing that you can look at and download. There's a PDF that if you Google IRS Publication 517, you can download that. But there's some things that the government does that allows you to have a housing allowance. So let me ask you this. What is a housing allowance? Does anybody know what the housing allowance is?
Fair market value for the actual expense itself.
Yeah, it's anything, and we're going to talk about that fair market rental value, but it's anything that you have expenses that it takes to run your home. And so this really, anything except for food, toiletries, and clothing. So if you think about your rent or your mortgage or your utilities and any yard work that you do, if you buy gas for your mower or buy plants for your yard or fertilizer or furniture, you can include a lot of things. The only thing it doesn't include, Pastor Steve, is maid service. So you can't include maid service on there. But you can get somebody to mow your yard. But I don't know if you can get somebody to mow your yard then go clean your house. So I guess you can only just do one. But you can pay for somebody to mow your yard. But maid service is not included in that. But any type of thing like your internet. And so if you have internet at your house, that can be including in your housing allowance. Your Ring. Some of you may have a Ring camera. And there's an annual expense for that. That all can be included in your housing allowance. And so who's eligible for housing allowance? That's really those who are licensed, ordained, or credentialed by their church or their denomination. Those who are performing the sacerdotal duties of the church, like funerals and preaching and administering the sacraments. And there's also the worship, if you're leading worship. It also includes administration. Because you have some on your staff, maybe even you that don't perform those, but you are behind the scenes. You do all the administrative, and so you're including in that. And then also a leader within the organization. So there's a little bit of umbrella there for those who can take the housing allowance. And so how do you determine the housing allowance? Pastor Steve said one of those. Yes. Yes, sir. You can, as long as it justifies, and you can look at that. Let's say that you have housing allowance to, let's just say 30,000 is your housing allowance. If you do 20,000 or 10,000, break it up in that way, you can. So if you just break it up to make sure it equals 30,000, to take that. You can't do 30,000, 30,000. Yeah. You can try. I mean, I'm not gonna advocate for that, but see what the IRS say. But I would not do that. But yeah, I would make sure it's. Yes, you could do that, just as long as you justify that as a household. But there's three ways to determine your housing allowance. It's the lesser of these three ways. One is a resolution. And so many of you may have to turn in a church resolution saying, hey, this is the housing allowance for the coming year. So you usually have to do that at the beginning of a year. Like if your calendar runs, physical calendar runs from January to December, you would usually do that in November, get that approved by the church, November or December. And or, some of churches may run from an August to July. But just before that begins, it's not retroactive. But whatever you put on that resolution, that's one. The second is your actual expenses. So taking up all of those things. On page 12 in that Minister's Income Guide, as we said a while ago, there is a housing allowance worksheet. So if you add all that up, and if you put 30,000 on your housing allowance for your resolution, your actual expenses were 32, you'd have to go with the 30. There are some ways that some churches put an open-ended on that resolution, so there's not a number on there. So that's one way to do that, is to keep that more open-ended, and that way you could use your actual expenses. And then the third way, it's the lesser of these three, as what Pastor Steve had said, it's the fair market rental value of your home. Several ways to determine that. One is that if you get with a realtor in your church, they can tell you what a house your size in your area fully furnished rents for. You can also look on Zillow or Redfin, look to see what your house would rent for on a monthly basis, then throw in your actual expenses in there. Another way that you can do that is go to like Vrbo or Airbnb and see what a daily rental value in your area would be comparable to your house. Multiply that by 365, and it's the lesser of those three. So you just make sure that you keep all those in balance, because if you have a lot of, I get a question a lot, hey, I'm just going to take out my retirement and pay off the rest of my house. Well, if you did that, took out $100,000, but the fair market rental value was $50,000, you're going to have to pay taxes on the other half of that. So just make sure that you're justifying that. The what?
You don't really want to pay it off.
That's exactly it. It may not be the best decision. I know being on church staff, we did a lot of Dave Ramsey FPU classes. And he's talking about that is probably good for, it is good for those who don't have the housing allowance, because you're not paying taxes on what you draw out. And if you're in a church plan, you have housing allowance in retirement. So it may not be the best thing to pay off your house. And that's one of the things that we talk about. But if you're licensed, ordained, or commissioned, you're still able to do housing allowance in retirement. And in retirement, it's the lesser of two ways. One, your actual expenses, or the fair market rental value, just the way to determine that. So if you're retired, that's the two ways. And so you want to make sure that you keep those in check. You may even want to have something like a fair market rental value, like from just on file. I don't know if the IRS would audit you if you did that, or if you did, but you have that backed up just in case.
But it's the fair market rental value plus electricity and internet and all of those.
Yeah, yes, and it just depends.
All expenses if you bought furniture.
Yes, that's it. And just to have that backup, just so you can prove that in case you ever got audited. And one thing that you can do as far as that is just to have something in your file in case that were to happen. So as we look right here, This is an actual couple. They were making $56,000 at their church. They structured their housing allowance. They said, hey, I want $20,000 to be my housing allowance. And so out of that $56,000, the reason why you would do that is because, one, you don't pay your federal and state taxes. So like in Texas, we don't have state taxes, but we do have federal taxes. So out this housing allowance, you don't pay any federal or state taxes. And then, and I was going to ask that question, but you see right there, your housing allowance can be up to 100% of your salary package. So, if you say, hey, I'm making $40,000, you can have up to that $40,000 for your housing allowance. And you still have to pay your self-employment taxes. As a minister, you are, you have dual status. The IRS sees you as an employee of the church. The Social Security sees you as self-employed. So you have to pay that 15.3%, the FICA and the SICA. You have to pay both of those. You file those taxes. But so that is on this portion, but you don't pay any federal or state taxes. So they said, hey, $30,000, I'm going to do a salary, show for my salary. So with this portion, they pay the federal, state, and their self-employment taxes. So you say, hey, some of you may be awake, say, hey, those don't add up. Yeah, so what they did with the other $6,000, they made contributions to their 403b9 church plan. When they did that, they did not have to pay taxes, federal, state, or any self-employment taxes. So they're not paying taxes on what goes into their 403b9. So that is another tax advantage as you look at your structure of your salary. And one of the things that we do is we do a 403b9 plan. I refer to what we do at Simplicity Guardian as a non-denominational retirement plan. And so we have that. We do church plans. We have churches with one pastor, minister, all the way up to our largest church is got 750 staff members. So we have all in between. And that's one thing. We want to serve the church with one pastor just as we want to serve the church with a large staff. And so that's what I like about Simplicity Guardian. And so that plan, the great thing about this is we're going to look at this, that those funds in the 403b9, it grows tax-free. That's the great thing about this is that you put it in tax-free, it grows tax-free, and then when you start taking it out in retirement, you use it for housing allowance, you take it out tax-free, which is great. It's the only place in the IRS tax code that you can do that. So right here, $278,000, okay, it grew to $500,000. This couple retired. So what did they make? You remember what they made? What was the salary package? $56,000. So they retired, and they started taking 5%. So they had $25,000 a year that they were taking from their 403b9. They used that for housing allowance, so they took that out tax-free. Okay? But you got to be in the 403b9. We work with churches who have a 401k or a simple IRA. They don't get to take it out tax-free if they're in one of those plans. But as a church, you want to make sure you're in a 403b9. Tax, how that's use it for housing allowance, tax-free. So the pastor, he starts taking his Social Security. So he got $28,000. His wife, like many, my mom was that way. She did not work out. I mean, she worked. She just didn't get paid by the church. She did a lot for the church. But so the pastor's wife got half of the pastor's Social Security, and then they had the $25,000 tax-free for housing allowance. So their tax-free income in retirement, $67,000. So they got a raise going into retirement. And so they took advantage of those tax opportunities. But here's the thing, men, stats are that we're going to pass away before our spouse, okay? And so that's what happened in this case. The pastor passed away. The wife lost her $14,000. She was able to take his at $28,000. But then this $25,000, the housing allowance went on to heaven with the pastor. And so they're not able to use the housing allowance. So that's not tax-free income anymore. And so basically her income dropped. Their income dropped to $53,000, plus she's going to have to pay taxes. I know that there's some I read the other day, President Trump was working on not having taxes for Social Security. He was working on that. But, this right here, this $25,000 will count as income. Therefore, it can impact the Social Security as well, paying taxes on that because that counts as income. So it could result in some type of tax tsunami for the spouse. And so, yes, anybody question? Okay. Yes.
Do you need to maintain a mortgage on your home in order to draw housing allowance?
You don't have to. You don't have to, but it does take up a large, the more you have for your expenses, then, the more you'll be able to take out. But, if you have your house paid for in retirement, you still have insurance, you still have property tax, you still have utilities, you still have you're still going to buy furniture, you're still going to do a lot of those things. But, if you're, you don't have to have that paid off, but if you do, you can still take out housing allowance. And also one thing too, housing allowance, if you are bivocational, you can still use a housing allowance. The government does not property. Our Simplicity office there, we have a financial planning team, and this is one of the things that I love that we do. We're able to take pastors through that may not be able to have comprehensive financial planning. If you were to go do this at an Edward Jones or we didn't even have the software where I was because it's fairly expensive software to do this, but you'd pay between $2,000 and $4,000 to do this. We offer this complimentary to do a right capital plan, and so this is one of the things that we do. I've been in meetings with pastors in their 60s that say, hey, the wife was like, hey, you can retire. You don't have to work until Jesus comes to take you home. And so, I've been on meetings like that. I've been on meetings where they want to retire at this age, but the probability of success wasn't great. And so if they extended their working for 2 more years, it bumped their probability of success. And so, that's one of the things I like. Stress test different areas. It takes everything through what's called a Monte Carlo simulation of 1,000 possible scenarios and gives your probability of success through age 90. And so that's one of the things I like doing. And Simplicity is a fiduciary company. We're going to make recommendations on the best, your best interest. And so, some of those have been, hey, if you add more to this, how many? 10? Okay, great, thank you. So, it's really been, I like this aspect of walking through because it really shows, okay, hey, if we did more here or if we shifted around, the other thing it looks at is where you should draw that money from first. Okay, should you draw it from this? Some ministers, have several barrels of income, maybe from a 401k, from a previous job, and so we look at the different barrels to draw from on that. And so it stress tests all of these different areas. We make recommendations. So that's one of the things that, and you can see right here, it's a pretty comprehensive, it's very in-depth. There's some that are like 90 pages. And so, but this is part of the thing that we do that I like as far as helping pastors and ministers. This one way, I think it's an objective way to look at, okay, here's where you are. Let's get you to this point right here, and try to work. Okay, here's some things that you can do, and that's where we talk about maybe some insurance. I know you mentioned a while ago about how to protect your wife. Well, we're going to look at some of that in that comprehensive financial plan. Yes.
What about within your housing allowance? What about those unexpected expenses? Maybe a parent or an adult child, there's an accident, there's an illness, and now you or your spouse are the caregiver. Would that be now a housing allowance? Is that any way in there to help that?
No, I mean even each situation is a little bit different, but on the whole, I would say not using that. So, yes, sir.
Just a quick question about our money's in a TSA. I want to roll it over to this.
Yes, sir.
How do I go about that?
Scan that or sign that up, and we'll talk. And one of the things that we do is we look at that. We look at it as a whole. We've got, and I'll just tell you, on our 403b9 platform, we've got great funds. We've got Vanguard, Fidelity funds. We also have Inspire, which are biblical responsible investments. And so they try to screen out anything that may compromise your morals, values, or ethics. They put in there companies that are more pro-life, pro-family, pro-sobriety, pro-entertainment. And so they try to get those companies in there. They're not Christian companies, but they try to do things that are good for the communities. So we have those if that's a conviction. Some people say, hey, I just want to invest in, we got great funds. Vanguard funds and Fidelity funds are low expense funds. One of our most aggressive fund is a FTech fund, Fidelity Tech. It's averaged 23% over the last 10 years, which is a great return. And we're also getting one on the platform now. It's an AI. It's a new one, but last year it did 85% return. This year it's done like 58% year to date. So, we're trying to get some good funds on there to help with that. Yes, sir.
So if you move the TSA over, are they going to take tax out, or can you go into the 403 without the?
We'll look at that, and if it's earned in ministry dollars. So what we do with like churches that have like a 401k or simple, and they were earned with ministry dollars, we can reclassify those. But usually, what you're talking about, the TSA, we're usually able to reclassify that as a 403b9. Yes.
So the only, if you got multiple income streams, one of them being a church pension, one of them being a 403b, if you're going to designate, the 403b, the only way it can be tax-free is designation to
As
the
housing allowance, that's correct.
Because, your pension may be a designation to housing allowance
Yes.
as well.
So it would have to be,
One or the other.
well, you could do a combination of both of them. You just got to justify that. So, and then one thing that I want, I know we got some time here, but one of the things that we do is we address, this is the things that we address to longevity, liquidity, inflation, market, mortality, and taxes. That's one of the things that we do is simplicity. 5 minutes, okay. But the last thing I want to look at here is what's called the CAP plan. CAP plan is a dual split loan regime. It's an insurance product. Some churches, I'm Baptist, okay? So I got Baptist background. I didn't know what a rabbi trust was last year. Some of you churches may have a rabbi trust. We work with several churches that have a rabbi trust, and we get them into what's called this CAP plan. We worked with a church out in California. The pastor, their staff was in a 401k, so they were doing their pastors the disservice where they wouldn't be able to take housing allowance in retirement. And so we've got them reclassified that 401k to a 403b9. But then the pastor also had a rabbi trust. in California, when he took those out, the funds out, he was going to have to pay like 48% in taxes with all that. So we put him in a CAP plan. This CAP plan, it's an insurance product, and what it does, I like this. I love this because what it's able to do, we're able to work with him and get him in this. He's able to put those funds from that rabbi trust, so dissolve the rabbi trust into this, and he's able to build that up into a cash position and with the insurance and take it out tax-free. But then also the church gets back every penny that they put in plus interest. So it not only benefits the pastor, but it also benefits the church. And so we work with churches who are behind. We work with churches that the pastor started the church from nothing, and as we talked about a while ago, sacrificed a lot to start the church. Didn't take an income usually, didn't take retirement, but now the church is in a better position financially. They're able to help. This is one way that we help get pastors like that caught up for retirement. And it not only benefits the pastor, but it also benefits the church. So,
As an insurance product, does that incorporate, just a question,
mm-hmm.
a long-term care rider or anything of that nature?
I'm not sure how if that one has that. If that one has that.
It is an insurance product.
It is. It's a cash, it's a dual insurance product. And so there's a large portion funds the pastor, and the smaller portion funds the church, and the church's piece of it. And so after several years that it sits in there, the pastor can take that out tax-free. And so whatever's left over at the end, his family gets tax-free. So it helps his family as well. So
What is your definition of several years?
it's usually it has to vest like 7 to 10 years. So before on this product here, that's usually the vesting schedule for that. This is very similar. The company we use called it's a Simplicity company. It's Simplicity Keystone. They help nonprofit hospitals and universities to help recruit top, talent. Because they can't compete. These nonprofit hospitals can't compete with for-profit hospitals as far as compensation goes. So they utilize this type of product. If you Google Jim Harbaugh, Michigan insurance, this is essentially what he had through Michigan several years ago. You may remember that. He had to stay in Michigan for 10 years in order to get that. That's part of Michigan, what they put on him. But he was able to do something like this, this product. So, yes, sir.
So in my case, I have a wife who works outside of the church, makes way more money than I do.
Mm-hmm.
Do I still claim housing allowance?
Yeah. You get paid by the church or ministry?
Right now, I'm not on salary.
Okay. Yeah, when you start getting paid by the church, yes, you can claim up to 100% of that as housing allowance. So, yeah. So, I've got one more slide. I think this is, if you want to visit more, if you want to visit more about housing allowance, if you want to even look at doing some type of comprehensive financial plan, scan that. And if you just want to have some specific questions, we can visit, and I'll be down. We got a booth right at the end of the stairs. So thank you for being here today, and we got lunch now, right? So if you don't have a folder, we've got a few over here, but thank you